Television captures moments in amber. History freezes in frames. Sometimes mistakes become immortal. The Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour wasn't just a variety show. It was a cultural revolution disguised as family entertainment. In an era when television played it safe, Tom and Dick Smothers smuggled anti-establishment messaging past network censors with disarming smiles and folk songs. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Join us as we uncover the unedited blooper that reveals the true chaos behind one of television's most subversive productions. A visual slip that exposes both the razor's edge they walked and the price they paid for pushing boundaries. Before we dive in, tell me in the comments if you ever caught this infamous mistake during a late-night rerun. CBS was desperate for a hit in 1967. The network languished in third place behind NBC and ABC, with executives scrambling for anything that might connect with the youth audience. When they greenlit the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour on February 5, 1967, they expected a gentle musical comedy show from two clean-cut folk singers who'd built a modest following through club performances and albums. What they got instead was a Trojan horse. The Smothers Brothers arrived with innocent smiles but revolutionary intent. Tom Smothers, the seemingly bumbling guitarist, was actually the show's driving creative force and head writer. His brother Dick, the straight-man bassist, provided the perfect foil for Tom's increasingly political comedy. The network had unwittingly handed a primetime platform to two men determined to reflect the divisive reality of Vietnam-era America rather than escape from it. The show's format seemed traditional enough: musical performances, comedy sketches, and celebrity guests. CBS initially placed it opposite NBC's untouchable Western bonanza, essentially sentencing it to ratings oblivion. But within weeks, something remarkable happened. The brothers began winning their time slot. By April 1967, they'd captured a 13.5 Nielsen rating, outdrawing the seemingly invincible Cartwright family for the first time in years. Critics initially dismissed the show as lightweight entertainment. The New York Times called it pleasant if unmemorable diversion after the premiere. But as the brothers found their voice, reviews shifted. By the second season, Jack Gould wrote that the show had evolved from mere comedy into the most visible platform for social commentary in television history. The brothers weren't just entertaining America, they were challenging it, and the network executives who'd signed them were beginning to sweat. But the real battle for the soul of the show was happening behind the scenes, where weekly censorship battles were creating an atmosphere of barely controlled chaos. And that's where our story really begins. At the center of this cultural hurricane stood Thomas Bolin Smothers III, born February 2, 1937 in Fort Riley, Kansas. Tom possessed a deceptively folksy persona that masked a fierce intelligence and steely determination. His younger brother, Richard Remick, Dick Smothers, born November 20, 1939, played the perfect straight man with impeccable timing. Their chemistry wasn't just professional. It was forged in their shared childhood trauma of losing their father, Major Thomas Smothers, Jr., who died as a prisoner of war in World War II when the boys were just children. The brothers assembled a writing team that read like a who's who of counterculture comedy. Head writer Mason Williams, who would later find fame with Classical Gas, brought a musician's sensibility to the writer's room. Rob Reiner, before his directorial career, contributed cutting political material. Steve Martin, then just 22 years old, earned $500 per week as a staff writer, penning absurdist bits between classes at UCLA. Most controversially, they hired comedian Pat Paulson, whose deadpan presidential campaign segments walked the line between satire and sedition. Behind the camera stood producer Saul Ilson, who constantly ran interference with the network, and director Art Fisher, who developed innovative camera techniques to capture the brothers' increasingly complex musical numbers. The weekly show operated on a budget of $320,000 per episode, substantial for the era but stretched thin by ambitious production values. CBS initially expected Tommy Smothers to be the wild card, but it was actually his brother Dick who most frequently tested boundaries. During the infamous February 1969 contract negotiations, Dick arrived at CBS headquarters wearing a T-shirt that read, "CBS equals Censorship Broadcasting System," to a meeting with network president Robert Wood. Tommy, meanwhile, played good cop, assuring executives that they could find a middle ground, while simultaneously instructing writers to push even harder against restrictions. The real tension came from the ongoing feud between the brothers and CBS censor Robert Wood. Their weekly battles became the stuff of television legend, with Wood often demanding cuts hours before broadcast. One particularly heated exchange occurred over a Vietnam War sketch on October 8, 1968, with Wood physically standing in the control room to ensure compliance. The brothers retaliated by leaving deliberate mistakes in other segments, knowing censors were too busy scrutinizing political content to notice technical glitches. Joan Baez was scheduled to appear in April 1967, but almost didn't make it to air when she dedicated a song to her then-husband David Harris, who was facing prison for draft resistance. After intense negotiations, she was allowed to perform, but her dedication was edited out, or so the network thought. What happened next would become one of television's most revealing, unscripted moments. But that was only the beginning of the behind-the-scenes drama that would eventually make its way onto millions of American television screens. The Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour was produced at CBS Television City in Hollywood, specifically in Studio 43, the network's largest production space. The cavernous 14,000-square-foot soundstage had previously housed the Jack Benny program, and would later become home to All in the Family. For the Smothers Brothers, the studio's size proved both blessing and curse, allowing elaborate musical numbers but creating nightmarish acoustic challenges for their folk performances. Each episode required a grueling 6-day production schedule. Mondays began with marathon 14-hour writing sessions, where the team generated nearly 200 pages of material, knowing that half would be cut by censors. Tuesdays and Wednesdays involved blocking and set construction, with Thursdays dedicated to camera rehearsals. Friday brought the dress rehearsal with 2 tapings on Saturday night, one at 5:30 p.m. and another at 8 p.m., allowing editors to combine the best moments from each performance. The production design, led by James Tritipo, created a distinctive look that balanced psychedelic influences with broadcast-friendly aesthetics. The budget for set construction alone reached $45,000 per episode. One particularly elaborate set for the December 1968 Summer of Love retrospective required a working fountain surrounded by 2,000 fresh flowers, which wilted under the intense 128-degree stage lights, creating a persistent rotting smell throughout the taping. Technical innovations abounded. The show pioneered the use of the Norelco PC-70 color camera, which allowed for unprecedented low-light performance, but required constant recalibration. Sound engineer Roy Chubb developed a custom acoustic baffle system to prevent the brothers' guitars from creating feedback with their lavalier microphones, a system later adopted industry-wide for musical performances. Behind the scenes, tensions continually mounted between creative and corporate forces. CBS executive Perry Lafferty attended every taping, armed with a direct line to network headquarters. During a November 1968 sketch featuring comedian David Steinberg performing a satirical sermon, Lafferty ordered the studio audience cleared when they laughed too enthusiastically at controversial religious material, forcing a retake with a more subdued response. The most technically challenging episodes featured the complex musical performances. The February 16, 1969, episode featuring Jefferson Airplane required a specialized oscilloscope-triggered lighting system that repeatedly malfunctioned during rehearsals, leaving the band to perform their psychedelic rock in near darkness until minutes before broadcast, when a technician identified a grounding issue in the control room wiring. Network censors created additional production headaches, often demanding cuts hours before broadcast. The editing team, led by Fred Benson, regularly worked through the night making last-minute changes. During the infamous Pete Seeger episode of September 1967, editors removed His entire anti-war song, Waist Deep in the Big Muddy at 3:14 a.m., just hours before the broadcast master needed to be delivered, forcing a frantic reshuffling of the episode's timing. With such technical challenges, censorship pressures, and the inherent chaos of a variety show featuring multiple guest performers weekly, it's remarkable that more errors didn't make it to air. But even with 3 separate quality control screenings before broadcast, television production in the pre-digital era remained vulnerable to human error and technical limitations. And still, something slipped through on the night of April 27, 1969, that would encapsulate the entire behind-the-scenes struggle in a single, unedited moment. The blooper occurs during the April 27, 1969, episode, the third-to-last episode before CBS would controversially cancel the series despite its strong ratings. This particular episode featured folk singer Joan Baez as the musical guest, comedian George Carlin in a rare television appearance, and a controversial Share a Little Tea with Goldie sketch that had already raised eyebrows during the week's rehearsals. The moment happens precisely 37 minutes and 14 seconds into the broadcast during the brothers' introduction of Baez's second musical number of the evening. The stage has been reset after a comedy sketch about Vietnam War protesters, with the main performance area transformed into an intimate coffeehouse setting. 3 wooden stools sit center stage against a backdrop designed to resemble Greenwich Village's Gaslight Cafe, complete with brick walls and moody blue lighting. Tom and Dick Smothers enter from stage right, dressed in their characteristic matching red blazers. Dick carries his upright bass, while Tom has his guitar slung across his body. They approach the central microphone together, with Tom standing slightly stage left of his brother. The camera is in a medium 2-shot framing both brothers from just above the knees. Tom begins speaking. Ladies and gentlemen, we're very fortunate tonight to have with us one of America's most passionate and authentic voices. Dick nods in agreement, adding, She's been with us several times before and always brings something special to our show. It's at this precise moment, as the camera holds steady on the brothers, that viewers are supposed to be focusing on their introduction. The lighting dims slightly in preparation for Baez's entrance from stage left. But if you look beyond the brothers, in the shadowy background where the set meets the actual studio space, something unusual is happening that was never meant to be captured on camera. And it's this unplanned, unscripted moment that reveals the true story behind one of television's most contentious relationships. If you've ever rewatched this scene, you might have caught something in the shadows behind the Smothers brothers that reveals the true nature of what was happening off-camera during the show's tumultuous final weeks. Now, here's where it gets complicated. What appears on screen was never meant to be seen by viewers. As Tom finishes introducing Joan Baez, the camera remains in a static 2-shot of the brothers. In the darkened area approximately 12 feet behind them and 4 feet stage right, a portion of the backstage area becomes visible due to an incorrectly positioned curtain. The black fabric that should completely mask the production area has been pulled roughly 20 inches too far to the right, creating a narrow vertical viewing corridor into the wings. In this accidentally revealed space, 2 figures can be clearly seen in animated conversation. The first, distinguishable by his crew cut and signature horn-rimmed glasses, is Robert Wood, the CBS Vice President of Programming who served as the network's primary censor. Beside him stands a man in a dark suit holding what appears to be a script with red markings. Perry Lafferty, the network executive assigned to monitor the show. The body language tells the story. Wood's right index finger is raised in a pointing gesture toward the stage, while Lafferty appears to be physically restraining him by gripping his left elbow. Their postures suggest an intense disagreement about something occurring on stage. At the 37:16 mark, Wood clearly mouths words that lip readers have identified as "stop it now," while gesturing emphatically. Meanwhile, completely unaware of the drama being accidentally broadcast, Tom continues his introduction. She's going to sing a song that speaks to the conscience of America. This line wasn't in the approved script. It was an ad-lib specifically referencing Baez's well-known opposition to the Vietnam War. The camera operator, following the planned shot sequence, should have cut to a close-up of Baez entering from stage left at this precise moment. However, there's a 3-second delay before the camera switch occurs, just long enough for viewers to see Wood breaking free from Lafferty's grip and moving rapidly toward the stage manager's position. When the camera finally cuts to Baez, she is already mid-stride rather than making her planned entrance, suggesting the direction was thrown off by the backstage commotion. Her expression shows momentary confusion as she glances not at the audience but toward the same backstage area where Wood was heading. This technical error, the combination of the misplaced curtain, delayed camera switch, and 3 seconds of unplanned background footage, reveals the real-time censorship battle happening literally as the show was being taped. What should have been a seamless introduction became documentary evidence of the network control that would ultimately end the series. The error escaped editors likely because they were focused on the planned sequence of shots rather than the background details. In the pre-HD era on smaller television screens, many viewers would have missed the background figures entirely. But with modern, high-definition transfers and streaming capabilities, this momentary glimpse behind the curtain has become increasingly noticeable to eagle-eyed viewers, and the context makes it even more significant. Just minutes after this moment, Baez would perform Joe Hill, a folk song about a labor organizer executed in 1915. The network had approved the song itself, but objected to Baez's planned dedication to her husband, imprisoned draft resistor David Harris. The background confrontation we briefly glimpse appears to be the exact moment when CBS executives realized Tom's introduction was setting up the forbidden dedication. This unedited mistake provides a rare glimpse into television history, the physical embodiment of the censorship battle that defined the show's final season, accidentally preserved on film for future generations to discover. When the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour entered syndication in 1970, something curious happened to this episode. The first syndication package, distributed by Viacom, contained a noticeably different version of the Baez introduction. The camera cut to Baez a full 4 seconds earlier, completely eliminating the background glimpse of Wood and Lafferty. This edit wasn't acknowledged or explained, leading to decades of speculation among television historians. Eagle-eyed fans first noted the discrepancy in 1975 when independent station KTLA in Los Angeles aired a marathon of original broadcasts from a different source tape than the syndication package. A small but dedicated fan community began comparing notes via newsletter The Smothers Watch, documenting various changes between broadcast versions. The backstage glimpse quickly became known as the Wood Incident among collectors. When Time Life released a partial DVD collection in 2008, they used the original unedited master, restoring the backstage moment to official circulation for the first time in decades. The accompanying commentary track with Tom Smothers confirmed the backstage figures were indeed Wood and Lafferty, though Tom claimed he hadn't noticed them during the actual taping. Online fan communities have developed elaborate theories around this moment. The last stand theory suggests this was the exact instant when CBS executives decided to cancel the show, while the competing warning shot theory argues it was a deliberate leak by a sympathetic camera operator trying to document the censorship. Neither has been definitively proven. In a 2011 interview with the Television Academy Foundation, director Art Fisher offered his explanation. That curtain was always tricky. We had a stagehand named Phil who was supposed to check it before every segment, but he'd been reassigned that night to watch the Baez performance for any deviation from the approved lyrics. The irony is that in trying to prevent one controversy, they created another. The blooper gained renewed attention in 2018 when Tom Smothers referenced it during his Television Academy Hall of Fame induction speech, calling it the moment when America could see with their own eyes what we were up against. The clip has since become a standard inclusion in documentaries about television censorship and the cultural battles of the 1960s. Perhaps most tellingly, CBS's own 50th anniversary special in 2019 used a digitally altered version of the clip, with the background digitally darkened to obscure the figures, a modern continuation of the network's long-standing discomfort with this accidental revelation. Here's where it gets strange. In 2020, a previously unknown color home recording of the original broadcast surfaced at a memorabilia auction, showing that Wood actually made physical contact with the stage manager seconds after disappearing from frame, creating yet another layer to this enduring television mystery. The Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour contained numerous other production quirks that slipped past quality control. In the February 18, 1968 episode, a stagehand wearing a CBS security badge is clearly visible, adjusting a curtain during George Harrison's guest appearance, remaining in frame for 7 seconds. The November 10, 1968 broadcast included a visible boom microphone shadow during the entirety of Pat Paulson's presidential campaign segment. During the December 1, 1968 episode featuring The Who, a stage manager can be heard shouting, "2 minutes," off camera while Pete Townshend is speaking. The April 6, 1969 broadcast shows Tom wearing a peace symbol pin that mysteriously disappears between shots, then reappears in the closing segment. Evidence of CBS's attempt to remove the symbol in post-production. During the February 2, 1969 episode, a cue card reading, "Careful, censored line," is briefly visible in the monitor behind guest star Ray Charles. The January 12, 1969 broadcast features a clock on the wall behind the brothers that jumps from 8:42 to 9:15 between consecutive shots, revealing a significant edit. In the September 29, 1968 episode, the brothers perform in front of a rear projection screen showing San Francisco. But when the camera angle changes, the image briefly switches to New York before being corrected. These technical glitches, timing errors, and production inconsistencies became part of the show's charm. Unplanned authenticity in an era of highly controlled television. Despite its technical imperfections and behind-the-scenes battles, the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour connected with audiences precisely because of its raw, unpolished authenticity. In an era when most variety shows felt rigidly choreographed and sanitized, the brothers brought an element of unpredictability that made each episode feel like a live event rather than a packaged product. The brothers understood something fundamental about television that many of their contemporaries missed. The medium works best when it creates intimacy rather than spectacle. Tom and Dick performed as if they were in your living room, not on a soundstage. Their folksy, conversational delivery made even their most pointed political commentary feel like it came from trusted friends rather than distant celebrities. This authenticity extended to the show's production values. While other variety programs like The Ed Sullivan Show maintained rigid formatting and predictable camera work, the Smothers Brothers embraced the visual language of the counterculture. Director Art Fisher pioneered techniques like handheld camera movements and quick cuts that would later become standard in music videos. The occasional visible microphone or lighting error actually reinforced the show's credentials with younger viewers who associated technical perfection with establishment conformity. The censorship battles, far from diminishing the show's impact, actually enhanced it. Viewers became active participants, reading between the lines and looking for the boundaries being tested. When Tom introduced Joan Baez with slightly subversive language, the audience understood the coded message even without explicit statement. This created a form of parasocial conspiracy between the performers and their audience. They were in on the same joke, united against the same censors. Music supervisor Jim Dixon made a crucial contribution by bringing in contemporary artists rarely seen on network television. Jefferson Airplane's appearance marked the first time a psychedelic rock band performed on a primetime variety show. The Who's legendary instrument-destroying performance of My Generation introduced explosive performance art to Middle America. These musical moments would have been extraordinary even without the technical glitches and censorship battles surrounding them. Perhaps most importantly, the brothers themselves never lost sight of what made them appealing in the first place: their sibling chemistry. Even as the show became increasingly political, the fundamental dynamic of Tom's goofiness playing against Dick's straight man exasperation remained intact. This consistent relationship gave viewers an emotional anchor amid the show's more experimental elements. The production constraints, The constant rewrites, the last-minute censorship, the technical limitations forced a creativity that might never have emerged in a more controlled environment. The brothers' most brilliant political statements were often their most subtle, designed specifically to fly under the censor's radar while still communicating their intended message. And in that sense, the brief, accidental glimpse of executives trying to control the show became the perfect metaphor for what made it special. The visible struggle between creativity and control, captured in amber for future generations to witness. The Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour was officially canceled on April 4, 1969, despite ranking 16th in the Nielsen ratings with approximately 11.4 million weekly viewers. CBS cited the brothers' failure to deliver a viewable tape of an episode for advance screening, though internal memos later revealed the real reason: continued failure to exhibit appropriate judgment on issues of taste and controversy. The final episode aired on June 8, 1969. The cancellation itself became a watershed moment in television history. The brothers filed a breach of contract lawsuit against CBS and won $776,300 in damages in 1973, with the court explicitly recognizing that the network had improperly used concerns about taste to censor political content. The legal precedent established greater creative control for producers in future contracts throughout the industry. The show's DNA is evident in virtually every comedy variety program that followed. Saturday Night Live, which debuted in 1975, adopted many of the Smothers Brothers innovations, including political satire, counterculture, musical guests, and the willingness to bite the hand that feeds. In living color, Key and Peele, and even The Daily Show all owe a creative debt to the trail blazed by Tom and Dick. The brothers themselves experienced a career renaissance in the late 1970s and early 1980s, returning to CBS for a short-lived revival in 1988 that lasted 9 episodes. Though this version lacked the political edge of the original, it demonstrated the brothers' enduring appeal. They continued performing together until 2010, with their act evolving into a knowing nostalgia for their revolutionary past. Cultural reassessment has been kind to the brothers. The 2002 documentary, Smothered, revealed the extent of CBS's censorship, leading to a public apology from the network and a special Emmy Award presented to the brothers in 2008 for their contributions to television. Tom Smothers, accepting the award, quipped, "It only took 40 years to get the Emmy we should have won back in 1968. The show has enjoyed multiple afterlives through home media. Time Life's 2008 DVD collection introduced the series to a new generation, while various streaming platforms have featured selected episodes since 2010. The unedited Baez introduction episode, with its revealing backstage glimpse, has become one of the most requested and viewed of the entire series. Perhaps most significantly, the show's approach to mixing entertainment with social commentary has become standard practice rather than revolutionary exception. When Stephen Colbert criticizes a sitting president or John Oliver delivers a scathing examination of institutional failure, they're walking a path that the Smothers Brothers cleared through the dense underbrush of network censorship and advertiser anxiety. In 2019, during his Television Academy Hall of Fame induction, Tom Smothers reflected on the show's legacy. "We weren't trying to change television, we were just trying to reflect the world as we saw it. The fact that doing so was considered revolutionary says more about television than it does about us." And that accidental 3-second glimpse behind the curtain. The unedited error that revealed executives physically trying to control the content of their show has become the perfect visual metaphor for both the brothers' struggle and their lasting impact on American entertainment. Contrary to popular belief, CBS did not immediately destroy the master tapes of the final unaired episode as an act of censorship. The episode was preserved in the CBS archive and eventually screened at the Museum of Television and Radio in 1991. The confusion stems from a different incident involving the masters of the Pete Seeger episode, which were temporarily misplaced but later recovered intact. Another persistent myth claims that the brothers were blacklisted from television after their cancellation. While they did face a brief industry chill, They appeared on the Glenn Campbell Good Time Hour in late 1969 and hosted ABC's The Music Scene in 1970. Their alleged blacklisting was actually a self-imposed hiatus as they pursued their lawsuit against CBS. Finally, many fans believe the infamous backstage glimpse was deliberately included by sympathetic editors as an act of rebellion. Director Art Fisher definitively debunked this in his autobiography, explaining that the broadcast master was delivered directly to the network without the production team having a chance for final review. The error was genuinely accidental, making it an even more remarkable historical document. Television captures moments in amber. History freezes in frames. And sometimes, mistakes become immortal. That brief, unplanned glimpse behind the curtain of the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour doesn't just reveal network executives in heated disagreement. It captures the exact moment when entertainment was changing forever, when the old guard was losing control to new voices who reflected a changing America. Next time you watch classic television, look closer at the edges of the frame, at the moments between the planned sequences. You might just catch history being made in the shadows. If you spotted any other production errors we missed in this legendary show, share them in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into television history, subscribe for more untold stories from the golden age of broadcasting.